What's the largest country in South America?
I spent 16 weeks there, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Hi, everybody. We are glad to see you again. This is Joshua and Alyssa and Around the World, episode 51.
Wow, that's a lot of episodes.
Yep.
It's almost a whole year's worth.
And for the first time since we have done this, I am going to tell you about Brazil, which is one of my favorite countries to visit, the one that I've spent the most time in outside of the Philippines and the US. And so here we go. I'm going to tell you about Brazil for the next several weeks. Brazil is located in South America. Here's a map of South America, and it is the big yellow country, the one that kind of looks like a little South America inside South America. And here is Brazil divided into all of its states. Can't remember for sure. I believe there was like 33. You can count those up. I could be way off. But anyway, there they are. And I spent most of my time in the northeast of Brazil. When people think of Brazil, a lot of them ask me, so did you visit the jungle? Or did you go to the Amazon? And the answer to both of those questions is no, because Brazil is a huge country.
Massive.
You think the US is a big country. Well, Brazil is like, I think the US can fit inside it.
We're close.
Pretty sure. So anyway, it is not, it's like if people, when you go down to Brazil, people say, have you been to Disneyland? And the answer is no, because the United States is also a big country. And just because I'm from the US doesn't mean that I've been to Disneyland. So in Brazil, I actually spent most of my time in the desert area. So this here actually is part of the desert area, but it is one of the areas that has the most vegetation of anywhere in the desert.
Oh, it doesn't look very deserty.
No, it doesn't. But this is as close to jungle as I ever got.
Oh, okay.
You might also think this when you think Brazil, if you think jungle. Now we're getting even closer to the desert. This is more like it.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
There's a lot of dirt there, a lot of sand. This is actually an island that I will tell you about another week. But anyway, there is some vegetation, and it is not all just like the Sahara Desert, but it is very dry actually. They get rain during a few months of the year, and then after that, everything just turns brown. This is actually off the coast. So Brazil borders the Atlantic Ocean, and that there is the ocean in the background, the beach. This here is a man-made lake.
What?
Yeah. And that is where the island is located that I'm going to tell you about some more another time. So they have a lot of water in different areas, but, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. This is a picture taken from the island one night. I just thought it was pretty cool. That was the boat we took to the island, and it was just really cool with the sunset. Now, interestingly enough, this is grown right in the middle of the desert. You've been to Israel, and you've seen a lot of the stuff that they've done to grow stuff like this. Well, these grapes are actually grown using methods from Israel.
Oh.
So right here in the middle of the desert, there is a river running through. It's the San Francisco River, and it provides water for all these farmers. They take water off of that river to feed their crops. And these grapes and this big grape plantation, basically, they are watered with drip hose or drip tape that is fed with water from the river. And so all this stuff is just grown up right in the middle of the desert like you'd see in Israel.
Well, it makes sense to follow their ways of doing things because they are kind of on a desert too.
Yep. But then you get off the farm and you're driving on dusty roads again. So this is really cool. We had passion fruit there. There was bananas that we didn't go and look at, but these grapes were some of the best grapes I've ever had.
And green and red grapes mixed together like that?
Those green ones will turn red.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, kind of funny.
Yep, but they had both growing in separate spots.
Okay.
So they did have green grapes there too. Now there are a lot of nice places in Brazil. This is one of the houses I got to stay at, and look at that grass. That's real. They watered that.
Wow.
That doesn't just grow by itself.
That looks impressive. Very green.
Actually, it's more like a weed, but it's like really nice weed, and so you just let it grow up. It's easier than growing grass. But it has the same texture and feel. It's pretty cool. But there are also other places where people live in places like this. Kind of like what we saw in the Philippines, or you've seen in other places in the world. There is a lot of what you would call third world country there. There's also a lot of what you would call first world country. This is there on the Atlantic Ocean. This is in Fortaleza. And as you can see, they have nice buildings there. You go inside, they have air conditioning, they have all the nice things you'd see in the buildings here. Actually, those buildings, although it looks like it's like painted on the outside, that's tile.
Whoa.
It's tiled all the way up and down. That's very common on their apartment buildings and office buildings there. They tile them all the way up.
That's a lot of work.
I've never seen that before. That. And there's me looking out
little baby
over.
guy.
Yep, I'm just a baby, little guy, and that is desert. But it was short. It was during the time and right near the end of the rainy season, so everything is green. But if you had looked at this maybe like 3 months later, it would all be dead. So I was there at the right time to see all the green, and there were some big rain storms while I was there. And next week, you'll have to come back because I'm going to tell you about some of the food. And I love their food. There's some really good things. There's some things that are okay, but there's some I just really enjoy.
And you're a good photographer, so you have pictures of it, so you can prove that you ate it and that it looked
Or
good.
I could prove that the food was there and someone else ate it.
Or that too, I guess.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we have a new story.
Okay.
Our new story is not quite as long as our other stories were, so it's a little bit of a shorter story. But it's kind of fun because it's a different person. It's a missionary that I hadn't heard of before. So I got to learn a little bit about his life. I read a little bit about him, and then we'll share the story with you.
Okay.
So,
Sounds good.
our story today is called Praying Hyde. And it's a story about a missionary who got a nickname based on what he did with his life. So, have you ever had a nickname? When I was little, I had lots of nicknames. And I really don't like hearing them now because now that I'm grown up, I don't really think that those nicknames describe me anymore. Like, I think my parents had one about me, like Slobbering or Slimer or something like that. But some nicknames you like to have because they describe who you are or something that you like to do, and you'll keep that kind of a nickname. And our story is about a missionary who got a nickname just based on how he lived his life. And if you think about it, Praying Hyde, what do you think he did a lot of? If he answered praying, you got the right answer. He did a lot of praying. So we're going to learn about John Hyde over the next few weeks. So John Hyde was born in the state of Illinois, and that's the same state I was born in, actually, in Illinois in 1865. So that's been a few years ago. And he was born to a family who his dad was a pastor, and he had, let me see if I can remember, he had 2 brothers and 3 sisters. So family of 6. And he grew up in this great family, and his dad, as a pastor, was very concerned about having missionaries go to places that hadn't ever heard the good news of Jesus before. So a lot of times when they were together as a family, his dad would pray, and God, please send people to go to those faraway places of people who have never heard the good news of the gospel. So it wasn't really a big surprise that later in life, 2 of his children became missionaries. Well, as John grew up, one of his older brothers, Edmund, felt like God wanted him to be a missionary. So Edmund went to school to train to learn to become a missionary. And one of his summers during his work, he went to the state of Montana to help start up a lot of Sunday schools out there, just to kind of get practice and what it was going to be like to be a missionary, sharing the gospel with people and all these different groups. And while he was in Montana for the summer, he got really sick, and he went to the doctor. And the doctor told him that he had mountain fever. So this is John's brother, Edmund. He said, you have mountain fever and you need to leave the area. You need to go back to your home, and then hopefully your body will get better. Well, Edmund was really sick, and his body was getting so worn down, and he was getting a very high fever. So his friends took his train ticket and they pinned it to his clothes, because the train was the fastest way for him to get from Montana all the way to Illinois, which is a long trip if you're taking it by train. So they pinned his ticket to his clothes, and they wrote out all these notes to give to the conductors and to the different people on the trains to help hopefully get Edmund to his home again. And so he got on that train, and he was really sick, and his fever was really high, and it was hard for him to concentrate and know what was going on. But he did eventually make it to Illinois and met up, and his family came, and they got him from the train, and they brought him home. And sadly, 3 days later, he died. And his family didn't quite know what God was doing. How do we know what God's doing when somebody dies? It seems like life isn't going how we want it. But God always has a plan. No matter what's going to happen, whatever happens, if you are trusting Christ and you are one of God's people and you're following after what he wants you to do, he's always going to use even the bad things for his good. Well, John's brother Edmund died, and John felt very strongly that maybe he needed to change what he was focusing on. Maybe he shouldn't just be studying to be a pastor, which was what John's plan was. Maybe he should think about being a missionary. So God began to plant that little thought in John's mind. And as he was going to seminary, studying to be a pastor, he spent time praying and talking to God, and one night he just felt very, very burdened, and he got down on his knees, and he prayed all night long, asking God, what did God want him to do? And he took time to just talk to God. He wasn't rushed. He wasn't tired. He just wanted to talk to God and think and talk out a lot of the things he was thinking about and praying about and wanting to see what God wanted him to do. And the next morning he came into class not having slept at all, and he told his friends, I know it's settled. God wants me to be a missionary. I don't know where he wants me to go, but he wants me to be a missionary, just like my brother was going to be a missionary. That's what God has called me to do. So he finished seminary and he went on and trained to be a missionary. But he didn't know where God was going to send him. He just knew God wanted him to be a missionary somewhere in the world. And God used a bad thing, a sad thing, like his brother dying, for John to realize he needed to be the next missionary. So you're going to have to come back next week to see where John is going to go as a missionary and how God's going to use him even a little bit more.
All right. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a missionary today that we have told you about before, so we are going to give an update on them. They are one of the missionaries that our church supports. So here is the Mickish family, and they are up in Ontario, Canada. There's Rick and his wife, and I meant to put in a picture of the whole family, and I'm sorry, I did not do that.
Oops.
So we will see them as we go throughout our pictures, but I didn't put up the picture of them all together. So I asked them, what is COVID life like right now in Canada? And I know that we've been asking everybody this, but it's kind of different everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's a good thing to ask about and to know. He said that it is difficult. Ontario restrictions change frequently. Right now, they are under a stay-at-home order and only travel for medical appointments, groceries, and essential services.
Yuck.
Sounds like Chile and France and
Lots of other places.
Peru. Sunday mornings are live online. From last May to December, they were allowed up to 30% of their building capacity, which worked well because they seat 96 and they have about 30 on Sunday mornings.
Oh, well, that worked out.
They will be going back to their in-person services very soon.
Yay.
I asked what are they allowed to do right now with the current restrictions. Well, I already mentioned that basically they have to stay at home. They can meet with 10 people at church or outdoors with the children and youth as long as they are social distanced. Funerals are limited to family only, and hospital visits in Thunder Bay, that's the area where they live, are also limited. They have prayer times with Zoom, and they are having some Bible studies as well on Zoom, but it's definitely not the same. He says God made us to be relational people and function within the context of the local church, and it has been difficult to do this with the ever-changing restrictions in Ontario. It sounds like that if they had to go backwards since December, and hopefully they can meet again in person. They said COVID has reduced their contact with church folks, especially their seniors. They still get together with youth, but their time in the Word of God is not like it was at the church because they are mostly outside. And that is when the weather cooperates. That too. Our homeschooling has remained unchanged and is going well. The extra time at home has allowed us to focus on the outreach on Northern Reserves. And those are some communities to the north of them, which they've really been working hard to build relationships with in the past few years. I said, are kids able to go back to school, to play together, to do sports? They said, I already mentioned that they are homeschooled, but they love their winters there. Let's see. Here we go. We may have shown this picture in the past, but I can't remember. But he says, Beardmore, that's the town where they are, has the world's largest snowman.
That's funny.
Snowman. They also enjoy snowmobiling, and I think probably during the winter, at least when I was in Ontario at a camp, once winter came, everyone just rode snowmobiles everywhere around the campground. No vehicles, which made a lot of sense.
We'll have to clear the road for those.
Yeah. They enjoy snowmobiling, ice fishing, and a 4-month trapping season.
Oh.
Wow. So here are some pictures of them and their catches.
Oh, wow.
They set bait and check their traps 3 to 4 days a week after school. 3 of their kids and himself are licensed trappers in Ontario. Wow, look at those.
Those are some big animals. Oh my.
And it looks like they keep busy.
Yeah.
And he said the kids also skate at the ice rink, and so they are able to do a few things. Looks like they're playing hockey.
Hockey.
So there they are again with all their trappings. And wow, those are a lot of...
Wolves?
I think so.
So much variation.
Or
in their
gray
colors and
foxes.
stuff.
I'm not sure. Because the red foxes are smaller than the gray ones. I don't know how big the gray ones get though, so maybe those are wolves. It shows how much I know about trapping. I asked if anything has been surprisingly beneficial during this whole season, and they said more time with family playing board games, reading together, sharing family time. They also do a lot of texting and phone calling.
What in the world? Or it just reset itself.
Oh, it did?
No, like, it didn't run out of battery. It just
Oh.
turned itself off.
I'm gonna have to do a lot of editing for this one. They also do a lot of texting, phone calling, and Zoom meetings with other believers to keep in touch. And
Ooh.
looks like they have
Fishing.
some great fishing up there.
Yeah.
Look at
Oh,
that.
my goodness. That's a big
Whew.
fish.
Good for them. I asked how we could pray for them in the coming weeks, and they said pray for a family that has had 2 deaths in 3 months.
Oh, wow.
It's an unsaved family, but they are open to the gospel. I'm not sure if this is the family or if this is maybe something else, but he said pray for the family. obviously trying to reach out to them, and this is a time when they're really hurting. And so pray that they'd have good opportunities to keep investing in their lives. Pray for the native reserves to open up so they can restart their children's and youth ministries. And pray for the salvation of Dan, Leon, Tanya, Darren, and Brenda. Also pray for a guy named Kevin who got saved last November on their trap line.
Wow.
I wonder how that came about. But he's really struggling right now. So there you go. That is the Mickish family, and we love having them as missionaries at our church. Several of our people know them better than I do. And
I don't know them yet, but I'd love to meet them.
That's true. She has not met them yet. But they have a difficult ministry, especially with COVID right now. Obviously, like a lot of other people, that has complicated things. And hopefully they can get back to meeting together soon. And thankfully, they have technology, so they can text, call, still see people, even if it's on a computer. But pray for those people as you think of it, especially the one family that has had these deaths.
It's tough. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed our episode and found our hidden item again this week.
Yep, come back next week so you can hear about what the Brazilians like to eat. You may be surprised, actually. You might hear something and say, oh, I didn't know they ate that.
And find out where John's going to go as a missionary. So you better come back.
Yep, we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.